I, 22, female, have been staying away from home for the past 4 years now. I moved out for college at 18 and then I ended up getting a job there, so I didn't come back. I did visit occasionally, but that was about it. And to be honest, it's not like I actually missed the place where I grew up, since my childhood and teenage years were not very pleasant. Growing up, I was bullied relentlessly for just about everything. My dad passed away when I was 10 years old, so I grew up kind of poor. I mean, there was food on the table every day, but that was the bare minimum. I was also sort of really tall and thin, so I looked very lanky, which also became something that people would bully me about, calling me Slender Man and stuff. I tried to laugh it off, but it would hurt. Things got particularly bad in high school and people got way meaner. There was a group of girls who wouldn't pass up any chance to make fun of me and bully me. They would bully everyone in general, to be fair, but I was one of their favorites. It made me insecure about almost everything, from my height to my weight to the way that I lived. I wanted to disappear altogether. It was so bad. One time these girls bullied me for the length of my jeans. They ended right above my ankles because I was too tall for them, but I didn't want to ask my mom to buy me another pair, so I just continued wearing them. They wouldn't stop making fun of it, so I ended up running away to the girls' washroom in tears and locked myself inside a stall. I let myself cry for a few minutes, but when I tried to leave, I realized that the washroom had been locked from the outside. I could hear the girls snickering and giggling when I started banging on the door from the inside, and I guess they only scattered when the janitor came by and let me out. Even after that, there wasn't much that I could do because of my mom. After the first few instances of bullying itself, I told my mom about what was happening, but instead of backing me up on it, she told me to keep quiet about it and let it slide. I never understood why exactly she wanted me to stay silent, and even after I asked her a gazillion times, she refused to say anything other than that we were poor and couldn't afford to go picking fights with every other person who made fun of us. She said that she was busy working all day and didn't have the time to go to school with me just to complain about a bunch of girls, and told me that I needed to be tough. Not just that, but she also literally forbade me from complaining about them myself, either since it would inevitably lead to the parents being involved, and she just didn't want to entertain any of that. I didn't want to let things slide all the time, but I had to, since my mother wanted me to, and I knew how hard she worked, so I guess I owed her that much. After school ended, I started college in another state, and that was like the fresh start I'd needed desperately. My dad had left me a college fund before he passed, so it was all taken care of, and my mother would send me money periodically as well. I took up a part-time job in college since I had some time to kill after classes, so I had sufficient money to occasionally buy a new outfit or two. I guess people were a lot more mature there because nobody made fun of me anymore and everyone was quite warm and welcoming. I'd visit home during the holidays to meet my mother and some friends, but deep down I was quite happy living away from home since it only reminded me of the bad times. Anyway, fast forward to a couple of days ago, I came back home for Christmas, and since this was my first holiday back home as a working woman, I decided to bring my mother a gift. I got her a really pretty dress and shoes to go with it, since I wanted to give her a token of appreciation for raising me to the best of her abilities, even in the worst of times. But before I could surprise her, my mother ended up surprising me. A few days before I was supposed to come back, she messaged me saying that she's been seeing a man for a couple of months now, and she thinks it's finally time to introduce me to him because I'm old enough to accept it. I was thrilled for her, since my mother had been single for most of her life after my dad's passing, so this seemed good for her. I found it a bit weird that she'd never mentioned this man before, but I tried not to take it personally since she was just protecting me. I asked her about this person's name, but she refused to tell me anything and said that it was all meant to be a surprise. So I only met my mother's mystery boyfriend after I flew back home a couple of days ago, And I'm still so angry about all of it. When I came back home, my mother told me that her boyfriend was already there with his kids and blindfolded me to walk me to the living room. I was excited to meet these people and even bought a box of chocolate and flowers for them. But as soon as she took the blindfold off, my stomach dropped because the girl standing before me was the same one who had bullied me for several years in high school and was now smiling at me as if nothing had happened. She was holding the hand of her little brother, who must have been around 14 or 15. I could hear her dad talking to me but couldn't comprehend anything since my head felt so fuzzy and weird. After a few minutes of stunned silence, I turned around and left while he was still talking about how nice it was to finally meet me. I walked upstairs to my own room without a word, and I could hear my mom's boyfriend asking if I was all right. I walked into my room and locked it so that nobody would be able to enter, and tried to take deep breaths. But my mother had come after me and was telling me off about how rude I was being right now, and that I needed to come back down and apologize to her boyfriend right away. I cut her off mid-sentence and asked her how long she'd been seeing this man, because I believed that she'd been lying on purpose while telling me about him so that I'd still visit and she could spring this on me. Her hesitance to tell me how long told me everything that I needed to know, and when she admitted that this had been going on for a while now, almost 7 years, it all made sense. It finally added up. I understood why she didn't want me to ever complain about being bullied, since she was more interested in protecting this man and his daughter than her own daughter. I couldn't believe that this was happening, and I told her to leave me the hell alone right now since I couldn't stand to see her. She tried to argue, saying that she knew that I missed my dad, which is why she'd kept it all a secret from me for so long, as if my dad was the reason I was so pissed off at her. I told her that she'd lied to me throughout my teen years and continued to let me get bullied in spite of having the power to stop it. She chose to keep quiet and let me suffer instead of having a spine and telling her boyfriend to teach his daughter not to bully others. And I don't think I could forgive her for that. Not now and not ever. She tried to explain that back then their relationship was just starting out and she didn't want to mess it all up because of his daughter's behavior, and tried to defend whatever she did. But I just couldn't accept it. After a while, she left and said that she'd be ready to talk to me once I was out of my room, and said that she'd serve dinner at 9, so I'd better come down soon. I was in no mood to talk to her or anyone else. I was so horrified and angry that my mother had chosen to be his girlfriend over my mom. Her goal should have been to protect me first and not her relationship, and I don't even know how she could even think that her explanation was one that would make me feel okay about this situation at all. The more I sat in my room and thought about it, the more I ended up thinking about how many nights I'd cried myself to sleep in this very same bed, and the angrier I felt about the unfairness of it all. So I did something that might have been a little too rash and stupid of me. I called up the cops and reported my mother. I wanted to sue her for everything that she'd done to me, but instead of going to the lawyers in my state of mind, I ended up calling the police to press charges. They did show up in a while, and it took me some time to explain whatever had happened while my mother and her boyfriend explained that I was just being hysterical. The cops sort of understood that I was going through a breakdown of some kind and explained to me that I'd be better off with a family lawyer, and then left. After they left, I was still feeling pretty worked up and could feel a panic attack coming on, but my mother flipped out on me and refused to let me go back up to my room. She screamed at me about how I was being an ungrateful brat and that calling the cops on her was the lowest thing I could do, while her boyfriend agreed that I had indeed gone too far. I wanted to fight back, but my chest was tightening and I felt really dizzy, so I just didn't have the energy for it. A few minutes into it, I think I must have collapsed and fainted or something, because the next thing I remember is waking up in ER. Apparently, I'd fallen unconscious due to the lack of food and water, and that, combined with the stress, led me to this state. I refused to eat or drink anything at my mom's house, so I guess that made sense. The nurse let me know that I'd been out cold for around an hour or so and my mother had been waiting to see me. I felt a little guilty, but all of it went away once she dropped in and told me that even though she understood how betrayed I must be feeling, she still stood firm on the fact that what she did was necessary and there was nothing wrong with choosing her own relationship over her daughter. She tried to downplay the seriousness of me getting bullied by saying that her boyfriend's daughter didn't mean any harm and it was all in good fun, so I shouldn't have been taking it to heart in the first place either. I couldn't believe that she was defending her actions and my bully even when I was in such a condition, and expected me to apologize for trying to get her in trouble with the law. So I told her to get the hell out of my room and leave me alone. It's been a few days, and since then I packed my stuff and moved to a hotel for the rest of my stay here, and my mother didn't try to stop me either. Now I'm considering suing her for causing me emotional distress for the entirety of my high school life on purpose and denying me a safe environment to grow up in despite having the opportunity to do so. I'm a little hesitant though, since it'll pretty much ruin my relationship with her and I don't have any other family to speak of. But I also can't just let this go. I've let things slide my entire life, but this is too enormous to forgive, and no matter how hard I try to think about this from her point of view, I cannot justify it to myself. I don't know aita for wanting to sue my mother after she refused to stop me from getting bullied while I was in high school. Update 1. I learned some more information about my mother and her boyfriend. I told my friend about whatever happened in the past couple of days, and while she did seem a little taken aback, she also said that she'd known about whatever was happening. As a matter of fact, everyone who lived in our neighborhood did, but the rumors never reached me because I was so quiet and barely ever spoke to anyone. My friend never told me since she never bought into these rumors and didn't want me to worry for no reason, and the bullies never brought it up since it involved their ringleader's dad. Apparently her dad had been cheating on his wife with my mother for several years, pretty much from the beginning of freshman year, and people knew about it since they'd spotted them holding hands occasionally near their workplace. My mother was a front desk employee and he was the surgeon at the same hospital there, so they worked in close proximity, and I guess that's where they started their affair. It came as a shock to me that so many people had known, but not me, and I kicked myself for being such an introvert, since having this bit of information would have helped me so much back then. I'm obviously disgusted that my mother had been with a married man and then preached to me about the importance of family loyalty. Yeah, she'd said that while trying to make me realize how I'd messed up by calling the cops on her. The hypocrisy is insane. Her boyfriend dumped his wife a few months ago from what I know, and he and his youngest son have been living with my mother since then. Their daughter, my high school bully, moved out of the city around the same time as I did, so she probably doesn't know much about this arrangement either. So yeah, the whole thing that my mother said about this being her new boyfriend or whatever had been a lie. And she tried to fool me into believing that this was something that had been going on only for a few months and not 8 whole years. I'm just so disgusted by all of this. I don't even know what to say right now. She hasn't contacted me either, even to apologize. Update 2. I did it. I'm suing my mother for emotional distress. I've managed to convince my bosses to let me work remotely for the duration of this lawsuit, and they've agreed, thankfully. And since I cannot spend all my money on hotel bills, I'm living with my friend who's been pretty happy to have me back and readily offered to let me stay with her, so that was nice. My mother was notified of the lawsuit against her a few hours ago, and she's been furious about it. She called me up to ask me what the hell did I think I was doing, and I told her exactly what I thought I was doing, taking revenge for turning her back on me in my hour of need. She refused to side with me when I needed it the most, so now she'll just have to cough up money to make up for it. After all, that was her excuse back then. She'd kept reminding me that we were poor and she had too much work to do to be able to go to school with me to complain about a bunch of kids. So now that I know that all of that was a bunch of bullcrap, I think I'm entitled to some compensation at the very least. Not to mention that it'll be greatly helpful to pay for the therapy that I'll most certainly be needing in the future. She told me that I was being ungrateful and that what she'd done was completely okay and I was going to lose. But she sounded really doubtful about whatever she was saying as well, so I don't think she's too convinced about the fact that I'm going to lose. Either way, even if I do lose, or at least I'll have the satisfaction of knowing that I tried to get back at her and didn't just let it go like she told me to my entire life. I'm hoping that the people who knew me back in high school will back me up this time and help me win this lawsuit. So I'm contacting some old classmates and teachers. I haven't heard a word from either my mother's boyfriend or my high school bully yet, and I hope they keep it that way because they're the last people I'd want to speak to at the moment. Update 3. Well, I spoke too soon, I guess, about my high school bully not being involved in this thing with my mother. 2 days have passed since the last update, and my mother's been constantly texting me about how I'm making a mistake and that I'll regret this forever, but what's done is done now, and I'm not taking it back. Today, I guess she sent her boyfriend's daughter a message of peace to me, since in a way she is the root of this whole issue. She's the one who bullied me in the first place, so I think my mother believed that sending her to talk to me and apologize for the past will make me forgive her. Tough luck, Mom. That's not how this works. Anyway, she visited me today and it was really awkward. I obviously had nothing to say to her and didn't even want her to talk to me or apologize to me, truth be told. I was fine with hating her forever because even after so many years her insults hadn't stopped bothering me, and I doubt that they ever would. She started off by saying that she was sorry for the way she'd behaved with me when we were in high school, that she was really immature and dumb back then and wanted me to forgive her. I didn't really mean it, but I told her that I did and that she could leave now since I didn't have anything else to talk to her about. But she stayed and told me that since I'd forgiven her, I should probably forgive my mother too. Like she'd forgiven her dad for cheating on her mother and had stayed in his life. Firstly, the only reason she'd forgiven her dad was because he was really rich and she wanted to be in his life because of the money. Even her mother had settled the divorce without much of a fuss because of the thousands of dollars that she'd received as settlement and will continue to receive as alimony. So I don't think her emotional connection with her dad had as much to do with her forgiving him as his bank balance did, and I told her that. She went all red in the face and said that I was just jealous that my mother had never spent even a single dollar on me, even though her dad would send her money every month when we were in high school and let me grow up thinking we were poor. I mean, we were, but she still had an extra source of money, namely her loaded boyfriend, and all she did was spend that money on herself in secret. I don't think my dear high school bully was supposed to blurt this out, and she looked really unhappy after she'd said this, but I'd heard it, and both of us knew that this would definitely come up in the next court visit. I told her to leave me alone, and she did go away, but told me that I was messing up big time by cutting the only family I had out of my life. Lucky for me, I didn't consider my mother as family anymore, so it doesn't matter to me. Had she tried to protect me when I'd asked her to, then I would have regretted cutting her off. But then again, if she had stood by me, then we wouldn't have been in this situation at all today. She thought about herself and nobody else, so here we are. Update 4. Hi guys. Phew. So it's been a tough couple of weeks. I'm not going to lie. I've been working day and night to prove that my mother was an awful person to me. I'm at my job during the day and have to also work alongside my lawyer whenever he needs it, so it's been pretty tense for me. The final date of hearing is coming up really soon, and so far, I've succeeded in proving that my claims are all 100% true. My mother's lawyer is being paid for her by her boyfriend, of course. He hired the best family lawyer he could find, so this is all taking way longer than it should, but I know that I'm telling the truth, so I'll get what I deserve eventually. I'm stressed out as hell right now, and the only thing I could do is pray that this one last meeting goes well, and then this will all be over. My mother will be out of my life for good. She stopped texting me, and she and her boyfriend and his daughter have all actively been spreading hate about me online and trying to turn people against me, but I have the truth on my side. Plus, I guess my underdog image from when I was in high school is doing wonders for me now, since people refuse to believe I'm capable of being the ungrateful, selfish brat that they want me to be perceived as. So that's good for me. I just hope I win this one, since it'll be a huge, huge deal for me. Not just money-wise, but well, emotionally. I'll finally win against the bullies who tried to ruin my life, and it'll all be worth it. Update 5. 2 weeks since the last update, and I'm incredibly happy to tell you guys that my wonderful mother ended up paying me $50,000 in damages for whatever emotional distress she put me through intentionally. I won. I can still hardly believe it, but it's true. Obviously, I paid off my lawyer first and also gave my friend who let me live with her around $3,000 as a token of appreciation. I'm finally flying back to my real home next week, and I'm done with this crap. My mother and her boyfriend aren't too happy about it, judging by their posts on social media, where they're talking about how they're so incredibly disappointed that the law decided to punish her for being a good parent who tried her best to support her greedy and immoral daughter, but they wish me all the best now. My high school bully has now blocked me, but it's fine since none of their opinions matter anymore. Because I won, and they lost. And that's the defeat they'll have to live with for the rest of their miserable little lives now. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.